What is happening out there, Roto Scouts football fans? Or maybe I'm talking to myself. Not sure who's here yet. Quick turnaround. Just finished up the baseball show, what feels like 30 seconds ago. Been just clicking and copy-pasting stuff back and forth to different places since then. But we're aligned here to talk through one game of football Monday night slate, wrapping up week one. Wild week one, or maybe the opposite of wild. Every single game except for the unexpected one hitting the unders yesterday. Not exactly a great first Sunday afternoon of football, but more than made up for it. I said a lot of this on the baseball show before, but more than made up for it with that night game, I thought. That was a solid one. Didn't hit on anything crazy. Only played a handful of lineups in that FanDuel contest. Noble RD entertainments here. Yeah, wild in the sense that we had like 5 random guy touchdowns through the day that just kind of weren't who anybody was expecting. Most of those like guys that weren't even really played much. But then we had like the crazy Danny Dimes. Like if you had Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers at the top of your board, Justin Fields at the top of your board for that week, congratulations. You're better at this than I am. What can I say? I don't think anybody was really thinking that. I mentioned it on Twitter and in Discord yesterday, though. Felt good for the person who won the milli on FanDuel. Bears name, Bears logo on his account, Justin Fields at quarterback. Got to feel good about those two finally winning something together, right? I don't know who the person was. Random account. Wasn't anybody I recognized. But you got to be at least happy for that guy finally winning something with Justin Fields. That was my take anyway. But let's dig into this one. Those Bears are on this slate. I'm sure that guy will be throwing some of his $1 million into this pot tonight. Bears are 1-point home dogs in this one. Pretty even up in the Vegas line, though. 44-point game. Solid across the board. A lot of usable pieces on both sides. We've got a major question mark in, does Caleb Williams kind of find it more in year 2? We saw a few spikes of quality last year, but overall, it was a pretty challenging rookie season for pick 1 last year. McCarthy on the other side, we have not really seen yet. He was picked, 10 last year? 10? Got injured in the preseason last year, led to Sammy Darnold having that monster season that he had. If you just slot in JJ and say, all right, I think JJ can be Sam Darnold, which going into last year, you would have been like, wow, if that's what they get out of that pick, that isn't going to be good for business. And now you'd kind of be like, all right, we want that kid to at least be that level. He's got a lot of help in this offense. That's what I like. I don't really love McCarthy just on his own, but I really like the help that he's got in this offense. If it can elevate Sammy Darnold, odds are we can get a little something, or at least what we need out of JJ. Whether the Vikings do or not, that's their business. But the help of Justin Jefferson, the veteran Aaron Jones there to just handle the rock constantly. Monster season out of him. Monster carry number out of him. They have Jordan Mason now as a little bit of a caddy with explosive upside. Hawkinson. They brought Adam Thielen back to this team. Just a lot of help. On the other side, it's more about a lot of potential upstart, really talented young players and how they may or may not come together. We've got, the veterans in DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift still there carrying the ball, but as far as DeAndre goes. You've got Zacchaeus in there as kind of a wild card who should see the ball a little bit at a cheap price. But then in addition to Caleb, we've got Roma Dunze, who did not have a good rookie year last year. And then we've got Colston Loveland, their first-round pick this year. Luther Burden, their second-round pick this year. And then Kyle Monangai as the number 2 running back on the depth chart, 7th-round pick this year. You've got Cole Kmet still there as a veteran tight end who should get on the field, see some targets in multiple tight end sets at the worst, and would probably spell the rookie a few times. I like him as a cheapo depth kind of option. But there's a lot of question marks on Chicago, and you could see it coming together. There's a lot of talent there. You could also see it kind of not really making it. I think it's going to come down to how Caleb plays. Wild take there. It's going to come down to how the quarterback plays. Handful of folks trickling into the room as we get into some player stuff. So Caleb last year, at least the volume was okay. 33 attempts a game, but only completed 62% of his passes, threw 20 touchdowns against 6 interceptions, but only 6.3 yards per pass attempt. Did have a 7.9 intended air yards per attempt. Can definitely get out and throw the ball. Had a few big games through the season, as I mentioned. Why is this so small? Cool. My screenshots of the game logs all came out really, really small. I'm zooming the Word doc here, but you're going to see me squint. Didn't throw a touchdown over the first 2 weeks. Then had a couple of weeks up and down days. Week 5 against Carolina, only threw 2 touchdown passes, but cracked 300 yards. Week 3 against Indy was the first time over 300 yards. He threw 52 times that week. 363 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. But in his first 5 games, he was over 300 yards twice. 4 touchdown day in week 6 against Jacksonville. Pretty gettable defense there. Only went through 29 passes, but completed 23 of them. Was that his highest completion percentage? I think that was his best completion percentage day, 23 of 29. But only threw for 226 yards, but did throw 4 touchdown passes in that game. Then they hit their bye. And then coming out of the bye, 1, 2, 3, 4 games in a row, if you remember this stretch, off their bye week, where he threw for 231 yards at most. That was the 4th of those weeks. That was week 11 against Green Bay. And most concerningly, did not throw a touchdown over that stretch, despite throwing 24, 41, 30, and 31 passes. No touchdown. Also no interception, which is good. Only threw 1 interception after the bye week last year. But that's a really concerning stretch of lack of quality. He was running the ball throughout, but did not run the ball into the end zone last year. Peaked at a 9-carry, 70-yard day in week 11 against Green Bay. But again, that's supposed to be a part of his game. So a little concerning lack of quality there. Bounced back a little bit in week 12 against this Viking squad. 340 yards on 32 of 47 passing. Threw 2 touchdown passes, no interception. Following week, 256 yards with 3 TDs. Dipped under 200 yards for a couple of games, but threw 2 touchdowns against San Francisco, just 1 against the Vikings again. And then another 300-yard day in week 16, 26 of 40 for 334 and 2 touchdowns against Detroit. And then dipped 122 yards and 148 yards in his last 2 to round things out. A lot of shaky spots, but just enough bright spots that you can really believe that there's at worst DFS quality here. And you've got the at least lane to spike some expectations of big days. Consistency? Probably not. Big days? Almost certainly. DJ Moore was hampered a little bit by having to play with what is this? This is all-in receiver 23. Let me just get his initials fixed there. So he's only hauling in 5.8 of 8.2 targets per game. There were a lot of accuracy issues with Caleb Williams through the season last year. He scored 6 times, had a 7.5-yard average depth of target on the season. He looked, by and large, like DJ Moore out there. But obviously, you're not getting tremendous quarterback play most of the time. A lot of targets. First read option in the offense. Again, that was playing with another big receiver alongside him for a big chunk of the season. So presumably, we'll lead the team in first read again. We'll lead the team in targeting again. And then everything else is going to kind of come down to the development of Rome Odunze and what the role for Zacchaeus looks like, what Burden looks like out of the shell. There could be, at worst, an absolute ton of volume for DJ Moore. this would load faster. There we go. 1, 2, just 2 games last season, over 100 yards. But again, there's only so much of that you can put on his shoulders. At worst, he's a very reasonable pairing with an expectation of 8 to 10 targets. And definitely some touchdown upside. Swift, just 3.8 yards per attempt last year, carried the ball nearly 15 times a game. Also did draw target in the offense, 3.1 targets a game. Not an irrelevant part of the passing game. Not an overly productive one either, 7.4 yards per target. Didn't score through the air, 6 touchdowns on the ground. The picture of mediocrity at the running back position, let's be honest. He's going up against a defense that was pretty good at limiting run yardage last year. 4.1 yards allowed per rush attempt, ranked 4th in football. And of course, this one's over-zoomed now. Minnesota also allowed just 19.9 points per game last year. That also ranked 4th. 5.3 yards per play overall was 10th. They came away with a 7.13% sack rate and a 3.61% interception rate. That interception rate ranked 2nd. The sack rate was middle of the board. But it came on a fairly aggressive pressure rate with 25% pressure. So it is a good defense that Caleb's going to be going into the teeth of. They're going to be making them, putting at least a little bit of pressure on him there. We'll see how often they get to him. And definitely some threat of him throwing an interception, if not multiple. Minnesota defense, definitely on the board. As usual, both defenses are going to be on the board here. Both kickers are going to be on the board here for lineup building. Once we get into Rome Odunze, he is going to be obviously facing the... I didn't pull his game log either. I did the notes in quick turnaround time here. So Odunze was also only over 100 yards twice. Had a 2-touchdown day late in the season against San Francisco, but he only caught 4 balls that day, 42 yards, 2 touchdowns. Was drawing targeting throughout the season, though. .9 targets a game. And that was on a 13.9 yard average depth of target. So definitely gets up, gets down the field, 33.49% of the air yards last year. Only scored 3 times, and again, 2 of those came in that Week 14 game. Not a pretty rookie year, and we'll see how Caleb does as far as hitting him down the field. But if we're just looking for that skill set and those route calls, then that's an appealing receiver. There's an important note here that I'm looking for. Yeah, per pros, fantasy pros, in their notes, this is just a good pull. Among 85 qualifying wide receivers last year, Odunze's catchable targets were ranked 84th out of 85. So that's what he was dealing with. He didn't exactly gain good separation, didn't win routes. So, I mean, there's plenty to blame on him as well. But he's going to get, at least unless he gets surpassed by somebody like Luther, you got to expect that the targets are going to be there, the opportunity. The kid was drafted 9th overall, first round last year. Came away with 54 catches, 734 yards for his rookie season, 7.3 yards per target. Rough, but potential for growth. Definitely in play for tonight at 8,000 on both sites, 12,000 in your captain spot. Going to be one of your lower owned, somewhat realistic captains. Wouldn't be completely crazy to see Rome go off and pay off a multiplier at those prices. Zacchaeus just do 3.8 yards or 3.8 targets a game, and it was on a 6.3 yard average depth of target. He is a dynamic receiver who, once you put the ball in his hands, can definitely make things happen. Scored 3 times last season. Also can carry the ball every now and again out of the backfield. Gained a ridiculous 8 yards per attempt, but that was on a 10th of a carry a game, so that was obviously not that many carries last year. It depends on what you're looking at as far as expectation. Some people think he's just going to be a gadget player. Some people think he's going to be a fixture for this team. His 3 touchdowns last year tied his career high. He's done that 3 times. He has never caught 50 passes in a season. He has never been over 533 yards, which he did on 40 catches in 2022. There is skill here. It's just going to depend really on how much he touches the ball. And he's probably going to end up 4th on this depth chart. Luther Burden, a little bit buzzy through draft season. Kid was a 2nd round pick. He's 6 foot, 206 out of Missouri. A lot of numbers that rival some of the very best in terms of what he did in medium samples in college. Just a really interesting receiver. 2023, 86 catches, 1,212 yards, 9 touchdowns. Played 12 games last year, just 61 catches on 80 targets, 676 yards and 6 touchdowns. See if I can find the thing quick enough here. I know I've got it bookmarked, but let me see if I can just find it. How's this for a note? There are only 2 wide receivers in NCAA history who were 5-star recruits and posted, this is totally arbitrary, and posted 1,200 plus receiving yards in the SEC as a freshman or sophomore. One of them is Luther Burden. The other one's Jamar Chase. Kind of interesting. Again, pretty arbitrary. Another one saying after his sophomore season, the comps were Calvin Johnson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, and Devontae Adams. Again, pretty good comps. We'll see what the kid looks like in the NFL. Obviously, you got to make the leap. But there's a lot of buzz. He's really cheap. He's kind of interesting. 3rd on the depth chart. Presumably going to see some targets. I drafted him on both my teams. I'm kind of interested to see what he can do out there. Obviously a question mark, though. And obviously another guy, Caleb actually has to deliver the ball. At the tight end spot, you get Loveland. Again, he was their 1st round pick. 10th overall for a tight end. 6'6", 248 pounds out of Michigan. Caught 56 balls for 582 yards last year, 5 touchdowns. He's a buzzy tight end prospect, but a lot of people are saying ceiling a little bit lower than some of the, big tight ends that have come out over the last few years. And again, going to be riding that ceiling entirely with Caleb. But as a safety valve, you do like getting to tight ends with shaky quarterbacks. I think that makes some sense. It's a big target. Decent hands should be in play here. 58, 54 across sites in the flex role. Inexpensive at the captain spot. I think we're probably looking at him mostly for flex. But definitely on the board. Cole Kmet, again, behind that, though, I would still expect some reps for Kmet. I would still expect a couple targets. And once they're down close, we might end up with the veteran in the end zone rather than the rookie. So something to keep in mind there. And then Mananjai, going to be the number 2 on the depth chart tonight. Drafted in the 7th round out of Rutgers. 5'8", 207 pounds. Not exactly a giant. 1,279 yards in 256 carries with 13 TDs at Rutgers last year. Added 75 yards and a touchdown on 14 catches. I think it's going to come down to partially how much are they going to be running the ball at all? And then how much is that just going to go through Swift? With Swift pulling, 18 and change touches, is it going to be 5 touches available for the kid? Or is it going to be a full series in the first half, a full series in the second half? Maybe he can break something, give him a actual realistic shot. Kind of up in the air. At 28, at 14, I think he's probably just a dart throw. I don't think there's much more than that. But he's playable, and at worst, a name to keep in mind. Other than that, your Devin Duvernays of the world are just sitting there as dart throw types. Going down the board on the Minnesota side, usually I start with the away team. I just have it alphabetical today and didn't realize. Justin Jefferson is obviously a top, 3 wide receiver in the league at worst. 9.1 targets a game last year, returned 10 yards per target on a 10.9 yard average depth, 37% of the air yards. He scored 10 times. He made Sam Darnold look like a star and could do the same for rookie J.J. McCarthy. Again, McCarthy, we didn't see it all last year. Keeping him in bubble wrap, hoping that he doesn't break. But tonight's the night. We'll see what it really looks like. In college, his final year at Michigan, threw for 2,900 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. That was across 15 games, 332 pass attempts. 322 attempts in 14 games the season before, 2,700 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Not exactly earth-shattering numbers, but good, and especially when it comes down to that touchdown to interception ratio, very good. And this was their guy. There were questions about where exactly he was going to fall in that draft, and they went out and got him. They're big believers. I can see a fair amount of volume here. Last season, this team ran a 57% pass play to 42% rush play breakdown, and I can see it coming up somewhat similarly. Again, Aaron Jones got fed the rock a ton last year. One of his higher marks for carries, or his career high, I believe, for carries. There's also tied his career high for games. I think he comes right back in that same role, going to have a fairly high amount of volume. I'm just going to do this real quick. Carried the ball 15 times a game, 4.5 yards per rush attempt. I don't know why the targets fell off the board, but he caught 3 balls a game as well. He is involved in the passing game. Only scored twice. More of a short yardage, dump off kind of a situation out of the backfield, 3.6 targets a game. So he is catching a high percentage of the looks that they give him. Involved in the passing game, but not necessarily when it comes time to score. It'll be interesting to watch TJ Hawkinson and Adam Thielen as far as who's the number 2 for targeting in this offense. Right now, projections-wise, expectations-wise, I lean toward the tight end somewhat. Hawkinson's coming away with a pretty decent number on both sides. A little bit fed by the PPR on the DK board, obviously. 6.2 targets a game last year. He came in with 4 of them each game. Reasonable expectation on Hawkinson to help the kid succeed here. Come on. So failed to score in his 10 games, but had 5 touchdowns the year before. Nearly 1,000-yard season, 960 on 95 catches, 127 targets. That was across 15 games, which was the second most he ever played. Going back to 2020, he played 16 games that year. Still effective when he's out there. 7.3 yards per target last year. It's down from 7.6 the year before. But again, that was kind of his standout year. I think as long as he's healthy, there's no reason to think that he wouldn't go back to something approaching those kind of numbers from 2 years ago. Thielen also didn't play a full season. 10 games for him. He did score 5 times. In 10 games, he actually exceeded his touchdown total from the year before. In 17 games the year before, he caught 103 passes, but only for 1,014 yards and 4 touchdowns, 7.4 yards per target. Came off of that at age 33 in Carolina again. And obviously the quarterback play there is somewhat erratic. 615 yards on 48 catches, was targeted 62 times, and scored 5 times. That's not bad. That was 9.9 yards per target. That was a big jump as far as the quality year over year for him, amid rumors of just being shot. 2.08 yards per route run. Again, going to our notes from our pals at Pros, since I couldn't put this together myself. Among 112 qualifying receivers last year, he ranked 26th in separation in the games that he played. Can still get it done out there. So not only is it interesting to watch back and forth with Hockenson and Thielen, if people out there in the DFS world are writing Thielen off to any kind of degree, it makes him a really interesting pickup at 4,400, at 7,800. Way cheaper on DraftKings, by the way. Interesting captain play on DraftKings if you're inclined to go toward skill players. Jordan Mason, I think we can expect 8 to 10 touches, somewhere in that kind of territory. Backup role with a little bit more. An explosive runner. He gained 5.2 yards per rush attempt on 12.8 carries a game last year. Scored 3 times on the ground. Not overly involved in the passing game. For our purposes, I don't think we captain him. I think he's a okay flex play, but I really want to see the volume before I get too invested in it, especially if they're going to be throwing the ball. And then downboard, Jalen Naylor, filler, Josh Oliver, filler. Naylor, technically third on your depth chart, caught 28 of 42 balls last year for 414 yards, did score 6 times, which is at least interesting. Drew an 11.5 yard average depth of target. So it can definitely get up, get down the field, and catch the ball, but question about whether Thielen's going to be more in that role and just knock him down a peg. So really, I mean, with our likely pass catchers being Jefferson, Hockenson, Thielen, Jones out of the backfield, there's just so much competition ahead of them. Any given slate cheap dart throw for a touchdown? Sure. Limited volume expectations? Definitely. 2.5 targets a game last year. Oliver, pure backup role, 1.9 targets a game last year. Did catch 3 touchdown passes. That would be an odd duck of a backup tight end touchdown to grab, though. If I'm going that direction, I'm probably leaning toward Cole Kmet, even though he's more expensive on the other side, if I'm just hunting for that tight end 2 touchdown. And then Ty Felton is cheap, potentially under-projected here. Technically 4th on the depth chart. Maybe I find him another half a point somewhere, but I don't think we're getting all that much down the board there. He was a 3rd round pick. 6'1", but a slight 183 pounds. Down depth chart behind Naylor, who I was just kind of saying probably not going to get enough looks. Last year in Maryland, 1,100 yards on 96 of 149 receiving, though. Did score 9 times. So just a mixer with an uncertain kind of a role, but very, very cheap. I will try and find him another maybe half point after the show's over for the last hour of lineup building. That's basically it on the up and down. EB, what's going on? Greg Biancone thought the total seemed low. If it had been, if it had been a 47-point total, though, would we have been saying, like, that feels a little bit high, especially week 1 with all the ugly football that we saw, questionable quarterbacks, and I think that's really where it comes down to, is rookie quarterback that we don't really know what JJ is going to look like, and then Caleb on the other side. I think that's keeping that down. If you were just considering the skill players, then I'd say, yeah, maybe that feels a little bit low. Like if you sub in, Joe Average, veteran quarterback that's a little bit more reliable, a little bit more projectable, then maybe that comes through a little bit higher. But both these teams in like the lower 20s, I think was pretty okay. What were the implied totals? 22.5, 21.5. Ooh, you know what? Let me all right, before we jump over to lineup building, it's going to be a short break. We're not going anywhere. You're going to watch me for a second, or you don't have to watch me, but I'm going to be sitting here just popping these last few lineups into the baseball model and updating the baseball projections, because that's important still too. Dodgers are in, Twins are in, Red Sox and the A's are in. That is all the teams. Fantastic. If you weren't around for the baseball show, we rocketed through in like hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes for 8 games. Record pace so that we could be here for this show. We will build lineups for DraftKings and FanDuel in just a moment. I know that's what everybody's waiting on. By the way, as expected, when we built some of those really low duplicate lineups, and I was saying like, a lot of this comes down to the quality of what those ownership projections from our pals over at RG actually look like. And it's very difficult for showdown slates to nail it. But as I expected, I played one of the lineups that I built on the show that was a sub 2 dupes, and it came through. It was duped. The hell is going on there? Came through. It was duped a handful of times. And that was, again, to my expectation. And what I think is our culprit with that is a little bit light on like every single person's flex position ownership projection. And it just carves it down a little bit. It probably should come up like when we see 1, it should probably be like 4 or 5. So just bear that in mind once we get to the lineup building momentarily. All right, let me grab the board that these go into. What do you guys like as far as captains? Start dropping some captain picks into the chat there, and we'll start with those when we jump to lineup building momentarily. As usual, I like getting the skill players in captain. Quarterbacks are mandatory, essentially, at least one. But most of the time, I like them in the flex spot. I think Keon Coleman won the day last night on from that Bills game on FanDuel. Not sure on DraftKings who ended up being the tops in the captain role. But I think it was a Keon Coleman. I actually had Khalil Shakir with a similar lineup and went the Coleman way instead, unfortunately. But I like the lineup I built yesterday. And it just buys you a lot of purchasing power. Got to obviously get the right guy up there. But we've seen what you can do as soon as you offset that captain, that MVP ownership with not a 65% owned captain. You can shave down those dupes really, really quickly. Bear with me, guys. Just getting these baseball projections updated. If you just came in the door, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Check out rotoscouts.com. Everything is under $1 a day. Baseball and football going on right now. NHL, NBA right around the corner. No promo to plug right now, but we'll find another one sometime in the near future. The hell is Zach Geloff not coming up? Where the hell is Zach Geloff a catcher? What? Are there 2 Zach Geloffs now too? Is this yet another thing I got to worry about? Wasn't expecting this. All right, 1 second. Okay. The hell is going on? Oh, this is problematic. At what? All right. Hang out just one sec, guys. I'm just trying to figure out what the hell went on in this lineup spot. Okay. All right. I have to redo those. Making it fun. All right. Bear with it. It's just the copy pasting, but I don't know if there was something screwy that it was using the wrong lookup on my on the baseball file here. I don't know what happened, but I don't want to accidentally paste the wrong information up there. So we're going to do that again real quick. Or as quick as possible. It's just these 4 teams. Is it this Rivero guy that's screwing things up? I know this is boring. I know this is a football show, and you're not here to watch me just paste lineups or paste baseball updates in. But if you were playing the baseball slate, you would want me to do this. Oh my God. Why is this so? I just hate it when inexplicable nonsense happens with this thing or with any of these things. I don't know why that lookup would have been changed. All right, back to Boston and the A's, and hopefully this is, yeah, all right, we're good. Nope. You guys are the best. Appreciate the patience. Best audience in the industry. As I was saying on the baseball show earlier, actually, timing got all screwy with putting together content for the website as far as the game-by-game game notes on the Optimizers article and everything, and did not end up getting a show done for the main slate, which sucked, in my opinion, anyway. I like getting out there and talking it all through, and just week 1, not a great start, but with more time this week and a more sane schedule, even with planning not exactly being my strong suit, we will definitely have a main slate show during the week. It's not going to be on the weekend. We will get it done before Friday night, or maybe Friday night. All right, baseball stuff is done. Sorry about that delay. Sorry about having to do it twice. That's been the story of my day. Basically, everything had to be done twice today for some reason. This is baseball. As long as I don't paste it into the football projection spot, we'll be okay. All right, last step. Put this up here, and we'll go to lineup building. Do DK first as usual. Okay, all lineups confirmed for baseball. All right, lineup building. Here we go. 132,000 entries on the DraftKings slate. Larger slate over there again. FanDuel, by the way, as predicted the other day, went to a $15 entry for next weekend's main slate millie. I knew they were going to do that when they put that promo up with the $5 get your money back. It's a clever ploy by them. Okay. Oops. All right, we're back. OMG saying NFL. Told a God says, got my brother Jason here watching too and playing parlays. Nice. What's up, Jason? Welcome. All right, nobody dropped anybody in that they wanted to see a lineup built with, so let's just pick I don't know. Let's shake things up with a weird one. Oh, that's pricey. Can't do that. Yeah, I'm loading it up with Bears, though. So let's do this then instead of Swift. We'll actually go with some of those Bears quarterback pass catchers. That would be nice if that Loveland price worked. I feel like his prices are a little sharper than the first two slates were. All right. So in that case, that I think is the way to do that. And then you can do whatever you want as far as like Aaron Jones in that spot is easy. One dupe? No way. So this is what I'm talking about, right? In 132,000 entries, I don't think this one will be duped only one time, but you can realistically expect that it will be lower duped than a lot of other configurations. And that's primarily driven by Adam Thielen, is I assume, about 4 or 5% owned in that captain role at the most. So you take those pay downs, you take the skill players up here, and you've got more likely skill players. Obviously, Justin Jefferson works quite a bit better in that spot, but he's not exactly cheap. He's the most expensive guy on the slate, so that concept doesn't really work to save money and then pay up through some of those other spots. You go Jefferson, you go one of the quarterbacks in the multiplier, you're going to run that price tag up a little bit and compromise elsewhere. There are plenty of spots, though, to dunk in for the compromise plays. Cole Kmet is cheap. Burden's cheap. Zacchaeus is 2,000. That's ridiculously cheap for a guy who might touch the ball and break a big play. So there's plenty of paths to go down, but that's not a bad starting point. I kind of like that. You're getting a little bit of faith in the Bears rookies and obviously in the quarterback. And then you're just getting kind of solid pieces out of Minnesota while leaving the big piece on the table. But if we're looking for, probable scoring paths through while not taking the most likely, most popular guys, most expensive guy, then I think that's a reasonable setup. I think it's a reasonable enough route. If you go that way and you want to build a little bit more reliability in, you could easily do like a Hawkinson there. And then you could go back to Loveland. Oh, no, I got Loveland already. 59. Like a Vikings D? That's duped 40 times, though. This is a popularity difference. Oh, actually, no. Let me fix that. So I don't typically pull this up so that you guys see their ownership projections, but just real quick, what I'm talking about here is 37, 35, 23 on those guys. These are the flex spots. Those guys are going to be owned more than that. And that's what skews our multipliers and our dupes numbers somewhat. Same deal over here, although they're higher. But I think some of these are 15, 20 points shy when it actually comes down to it. So that's why you got to think, 6.04 now that I put the actual defense ownership in. That's much more realistic. But I still think this would be more like 10, 12, something in that territory. Because you are putting the popularity of Hawkinson into it. The defense is always going to get a little bit of popularity. But just the power of putting the skill player and a somewhat lesser owned while still being very, very good, capable of bending and winning the slate guy up there, gives you all that purchasing power and gives you that ability to shave down your dupes or gain leverage, however you want to phrase it. Mix things up a little bit, though. What does that Vikings defense in the captaincy look like? Why am I not getting a price? Oh, this did this the other day too, actually. So we'll go there. See if we can get JJ in that one. And this JJ. I got 46 apiece. Man, I'd be tempted to go with like a Vikings Vikings wipeout setup with Thielen being that cheap. $48 apiece. He's just working Santos on the other side, kind of easy. And then like Burden, somebody like that, just to give him a couple bites at the apple. It's low owned. Again, probably not going to be sub 1 out there. But as far as like the idea of taking the Vikings D against the shaky Bears quarterback and all those young players who were first time on an NFL field, granted one of them's in the lineup, that isn't crazy. And you're getting all the best of the Vikings. I don't hate that. If you're inclined toward defense captains, it's not a bad way to go. 48. You could also go Burden, just kind of fit right in there. You could go Cole Kmet in that role. Same deal. You could answer back with the Bears defense on the other side, but I probably wouldn't do that against the trio there. But people do like those double defense lineups. I think people play a lot of these just because they, defense captain, second defense in there because they like seeing their names up at the top at the very beginning of the game. At the end of the game, you don't see a lot of those double defense ones up at the top all that often anymore. If I was going that route, I'd probably be inclined to do something like this. Kind of ride the defense, running backs, low scoring narrative. And then maybe the tight ends fit into that equation a little bit. Obviously, you're leaving an absolute ton of money on the table. This is not going to be a good lineup. I don't like this one. I don't know that double defense is a very good approach here. At least not captain and flex. Maybe it probably works better if you're doing something like this. Right, that's where your double defense maybe pays off a little bit better, and you still have 22,000 to spend here. What's the best we can do with a Jefferson captain? I can get both QBs in and still have 61 apiece. That's not bad. And then I just want all my volume to go there. I think would be an interesting way to take that. Just grab another little piece of that offense and some of the scoring potential, and you're just trying to fade the Aaron Jones entirely there and then pick it up if Mason takes the TD away, basically, would be the thinking behind that. And then at 56, Reichert obviously works in there. And then any of the darts from the other side. I would probably want to pair a pass catcher here, though. Maybe we get Loveland. And then 55. Something like that. It's really highly duped, though. Shit. 33. That's not bad for a Jefferson captain. We're doing that same idea as far as Mason instead of Jones. We get Hawkinson in there now, and then you're just throwing the dart at Luther Burden and Caleb Williams hooking up for one big play. That's probably one of your more low-owned, somewhat realistic Jefferson captain builds. And then obviously you can, You put OZ in that spot, we're gaining a lot of money to spend. If you go that route, you go right through Jones, but look at where we're at. Jones and Swift. Whew! 80 times. This is an example of one that you don't want to build. But that's just what that pivot to OZ's super cheap 2,000 gives you, that purchasing power. But that purchasing power, if you go there and spend it all, puts you into a troubling situation. Right? So it's not necessarily great to have that ability or to have all that free cash and then go actually spend it. So if you go this route with Zacchaeus in there, you probably want to leave a good chunk on the table. I think the easiest way to do that would be, instead of going Aaron Jones like I did, just go to Jordan Mason there. And then I don't love any of the other options. What if it was a Jones and Mason? I don't think I like that idea. Yeah, it doesn't buy you anything anyway. So then we're just looking at the option of leaving some money. And that's easy enough to do, obviously, if you go to any of the Burdens, the Colk Mets of the world down here, and you would artificially lower ownership, but like a more realistic one leaves 3,500 on the table and you're still duped out 30 and probably 40, 45, 50 times in that kind of a build. So it just becomes really challenging to use anything that's like right in the middle of popularity when you're getting Jefferson and the captain. But there are easily viable builds as far as actual point scoring, as far as building a lineup that has guys who will be on the field getting targets and touches. You can build through Jefferson. It's just you have to be really wary of where the field is against that. Cheaper than 2 QBs. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He's more expensive. He's just out of order. Slightly more expensive of the 2 QBs, which does make sense because I was about to say the kid who hasn't played in the league yet probably shouldn't be more expensive, and he's not. Let's give him DJ. We haven't used DJ much. And then what about top 2 skill without the quarterback? And then we're at 39. We're over 1,000 dupes. Interesting. Just feels cheap to do like that, but you could. Cuts from 1,100 down to 23, but still, I don't know that I want to go to war with this as my lineup and 24 to 35 people along for the ride with me. Doesn't really feel good. Don't love that. And you're probably not cutting that down even further because you get OZ in there. He's going to be popular at that number. And then we get to 58. So we could take like Loveland there. This is going to go up. 39. So probably call it 50. Don't love it. So what we really need to do there is our work goes through those guys. And you can leave these two. And then anything I want. That at 43. If I just threw JJ into this one, 17 still, 25 probably in real life. Caleb Swift. Nope. Nope. Spend all your money. 35, call it 50 dupes. Obviously, that's a very straightforward kind of approach. Just trying to see where we're at with some of this. I don't love the Bears wipeout build. But if you were to do like that. See, 7. I still want like some kind of piece of that. And then maybe we leave money on the table and get Santos? Still. Leaves 2,200. We're still duped like 25 times probably. I don't love it. It's just all about, again, these last few that have been frustrating have been, it was Justin Jefferson up there and now it's Caleb. And it's the exercise of just trying to find what can we do with those highly owned, expensive captains that really cut us down a lot. Not much on this one. I think the pricing on this third major showdown slate has gotten a little bit sharper. Or fourth now, excuse me. Thursday, Friday, Sunday. Like an Aaron Jones captaincy. Something a little off pace. Actually, you know what? I want to. Yeah, we'll leave both passers in for now. 61. I'm not gonna like this one either. Yeah, 26. Just going straight line through that doesn't really do us much favors. Obviously, you instead of Loveland, you go to Cole Kmet in that spot. You gain ground there, but it's still 22. How popular? Rome is popular. What was the difference between those two? Yeah, a little less popular than Swift, but pretty similar. So you really do got to shake things up a little bit here. How's OZ? Yeah. Right about the same. Yeah. Anything popular gets into that captain spot, and we're having difficulty with dupes. Quality wants Jefferson captain. We did that one. Swift captain. We can do that. Ooh, Thielen. Salaries look off. I don't know where they'd be off. They're copied right out of here. JJ 9,000. JJ 9,000. Jefferson 10.8. Jefferson 10.8. Thielen 44. Thielen 44. I think they're right. I think we started with a Thielen captain, but I'll do another one. I think that was my first one that I did, Ken. But I like that approach. This is how I build lineups typically is like I'll take WR2 at much lower ownership, lower price. Pop them in there. Like I said, Shakir was my go-to in that role last night. It didn't work out, but I'll take a second banana skill player or a top end skill player who might be, just fourth or fifth in the pecking order as far as ownership for the slate goes. And that's my go-to captain a lot. And that's the path toward winning with fewer dupes. Really, really is. So in the interest of not doing exactly the same lineup I did, let me think about what I did in that one. Let's see if we can get a Thielen captain and Jefferson. We'll obviously want JJ along for the ride in that one. And then Swift would be like an obvious next man in there, and you're at 2,600 apiece, so you got to get creative anyway to build. You could go with like a double up on the running game there and just try and throw a blanket over any kind of rushing touchdown if the narrative here is Caleb failure. Their pass catchers don't come through, etc. Now we only got 2,400 to spend. We are down at 21 dupes. This is not my favored version of this. But with 24, you could go to Zacchaeus in that and cut it down pretty significantly. I like the lineups we did earlier with Thielen in the captain role better, though. They were more realistic. They had Caleb in it. I think we left Jefferson out of those. And they were better configuration, but they were also down in the lower single digits because of the power of just having Thielen in that captain spot. So again, just by doing that, you're already getting different. You're already getting away from the field. And that's what you want. That is more important than having just like 2-3 points of raw projection higher. It is way more important to cut down those duplications, gain leverage. You don't play like the one big play, break one, take it 70 yards to the house kind of Jordan Mason kind of idea. I think that flies in the captain spot. That kind of plays. Yeah. Again, we're hunting for specifically, like when we build this lineup, we tell ourselves what we're doing with it. And we are hunting for that one big broken play from a guy who is explosive and breaks plays and who is going to touch the ball conceivably 10 times tonight. We're getting both QBs. We're getting the lead running back on the other side. Wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, rookie with upside, rock solid veteran. A lot of touchdown equity in this lineup. I don't dislike this. That's a competitive lineup in the event that Mason goes off. And he doesn't need to carry the ball 20 times to deliver. Just needs to make that one big play. Nah, it's too popular, this one. I mean, I could cheat it and go like that, and that's still only getting it to 21. I got a little greedy there. Go that route. Let's see if we can still do the Thielen thing. It was better. Loveland? Probably too high. Yeah. That's one where, not even enough. I thought that would buy us a little something. Does that make up the difference to DJ? It does. Yeah, it's still too many there, though. I don't hate that build, but obviously there's too many people with us. It was a great game for building around like game script or ideas, kind of like I've been talking through. Just because of so many different narratives that you could pick with the makeup of the Bears mostly. There's another one that's going to come through a little bit higher than I would want it, though. Man, it's down at 11. That's a little better. And again, that's probably more like 15, 20 in practice. You can kill Swifty there and obviously get Jefferson into it. And then for a version that goes from Swift to Jefferson in that spot there to go only from 11 and change to 13 and change is kind of interesting. But again, not an ideal lineup. You do have a pretty big Vikings wipe out there. Actually, and down there. That would be the one, this is major Vikings wipeout territory. Might be the cheapest and lowest owned way to build that as far as like who's in that lineup. The only other way would be Thielen, captain. Hawkinson there. That's actually lower owned. Oh, no, but that spends too much of your money. Can't do that. So, yeah, this is probably the one of the cheaper, lower-owned paths toward getting that, but this is still, again, unsustainably highly duped unless our goal is, all right, I want to chop the $500,000 or whatever 25 ways, which, again, can be very enjoyable when it happens. So I don't not recommend doing that, but that's not the ideal version of what we're actually looking for here. Yeah, Thielen 66. Was the multiplier over there off? 6. Where are you looking, quality? It's something screwy. I want to find it, but I'm not seeing it. Yes, Kenny, right now. Who you want to see? Anybody? What time is it? 7:15. I've also got to remember that I got lineups to build. Did I? That's right. 7:15 baseball start. Let me make sure everybody's in my lineup that's in my lineup. And they are. Excellent. I'm attacking that Twins-Angels game with bats like we talked about on that show. Twins-Angels game stack with Brian Wu on the mound fit together perfectly on FanDuel. Love that. Just throwing one lineup in, though. Dead baseball slate. Yeah, I deleted the placeholder. I built a placeholder last night that I really loved, and I hope that before the slate starts, I can remember it so that I can rebuild it because I went away from it. I think it was Thielen in the captain spot or the MVP spot because it's kind of what I'm inclined to do. And then I would have gone like JJ. I think that's where I had that idea. And then maybe not. Maybe that's not what I did. 10-9. I don't think I would have put DJ Moore into it. The hell did I build last night? Damn. It'll bug me now. So Luther, not Moore? And then Jefferson, maybe? Oh, well, that's low owned. It's a joke. Again, I would expect this is probably actually in practice going to be duped 6-7 times in that contest, but obviously you're way low down. And again, it's the power of having Adam Thielen at low ownership in the captain spot more than anything else, and then his multiplier not going as high as these other multipliers in what you can get purchasing power-wise with it. So I do like that. That might have been what I built last night. You could obviously work like a nailer into that if you wanted to. We haven't said his name like at all while we've been talking about this. But again, not expecting a lot there. If we want to go like Mason in top of that, and then you're at 31. That gets ugly price-wise here. You can't really get to anything that's not just depth. So then... No, we got Thielen already. This wouldn't be a bad spot for some Vikings D. Leave some money on the table, but again, we're way, way down the board in dupes. Again, these ownership numbers I feel like are off on more exacerbated on FanDuel. Right? Like if we make this like a more realistic, like actually, it's probably more like just for those three guys. Now we actually should have some of them in our lineups. Yeah, even with that change, it's still at 2.6. But you can see the point, right? Just changing a couple of those guys already like tripled what this would have been at. And I think that's realistic. This is where you should expect more of that to come down. But again, you can still see the impact that even with those changes, and that was putting Jefferson at 70%. Even with those changes, Thielen captain or anybody a little step down captain MVP knocks that duplication down significantly. was going wildly the other way. 82, though, now we're stuck. Gonna leave money on the table, obviously. You go there. That's not uninteresting. What I was looking at is like the good game by the Bears, mediocre game by the rookie. Keeps Jefferson down somewhat, keeps the major part of the passing game down somewhat, goes through Aaron Jones, so it pays off the MVP, and then just the odds and ends that go to Thielen just because I had so much money left. But you could obviously go, instead of him, you could have gone to 8,200, basically whatever you want. You could take the kicker, go that way, the other kicker. Let's pass through there. Let's see what a popular captain would do to us, though. For one, putting both quarterbacks in with Jefferson, look where we are price-wise already. 4,400 a piece. That does not leave us a lot of room. Even Cole Kmet is 48. Obviously, you're getting OZ and then probably Luther. Luther would be, whoops, can't go there. This would leave some money on the table, so we're cutting down our number there pretty aggressively. And then does that have a... I can, right? Yeah. Instead of Met, you can get to Loveland in that version of the build. And you're just getting the aggressive connection there. And then everybody else on this side that's not a top end guy. I can't get to Rome. I can't get... I guess I could get OZ 42. That doesn't really work. You can't get Luther to commit. Could do that. Also not uninteresting. Takes a little bit of the burden for multiple deliveries of scores from those guys down if you just go Santos instead. And that spends all the money and the ownership doesn't change really. That's a not uninteresting path toward a Jefferson captain that would be somewhat viable for scoring, that would have, obviously a big burden on these two, but not completely unrealistic. Eugene Ruiz, what's going on? Mason or Swift? Sure. Or are you asking which is preferred? If you're asking between those two just in a vacuum, which is the more likely to score fantasy points, it's going to be Swift. Mason's the number 2. Should see the ball, 10, 12 times. I think I keep pushing that number up as I've gone through the show. But just, again, an explosive player who you give him the ball that many times could make something happen out there. And for one game, for showdown format, especially at a cheap price for a good player, could is a lot of the time all we really need. As I say all the time on these shows for showdown, we want to deal with possible on almost an equal level to probable for showdown, where more often than not, we're looking a lot harder at probable for our full slate builds. Yeah, Mason is cheap. I agree, Elastic. And not overly expensive on DraftKings at only 7. I like that. I threw him into several of the builds so far. And I think you could as well on FanDuel. Again, that is just as good a dart throw in the multiplied MVP spot on FanDuel as it was on DraftKings when we were looking at it. But between the who is likely to give you, 15 fantasy points, DeAndre Swift. You'd see that just in projection. There's Swifty on both sites. And then Mason, not all that far removed. Again, that's not a gigantic difference, but that speaks to the who is the more likely of the two to contribute. Let's do a quick Mason one here. In that eventuality, let's go. Actually, you know what? Let's try and keep it creative. Go this route with JJ. And then we've got all the money in the world to spend. I would probably just put Swift into that, honestly. And then 13-7. The dupes don't matter. You can do whatever you want. So, I mean, you could take Jefferson in that one if you... Oh, no, you can't. 13-7. Could put Caleb into it then. Probably rather have it this way. Just get the little connection there. And then putting weight through JJ and the pass game without this JJ. And then obviously riding Mason up at the top there is your biggest risk. But that's reasonable. Not my favorite lineup we've built necessarily, but definitely in play for a Mason captain. As far as Swifty up there goes, three. This is costly. 43. But doable. I think, right? Again, we're riding through a couple less than likely guys on the Bears side there. And they're coming without their quarterback, which isn't ideal. I don't love this configuration. But that's a way to come off the end of a Swift build. Let's see if we can do better, though. Loveland and Oz. Yeah, it's kind of the same idea. Whoa, that one's up at 10, too. Damn. Wow, so that I shrugged and said that's essentially the same thing. And look how many more duplicated lineups it would have as compared to that version of essentially the same idea. You're taking the backup tight end versus the starter, so it makes sense that it would be higher owned. But for showdown purposes, this would be the way to build that version of that lineup, I think. Defense, kicker, always in play a little bit. For this one, again, I would probably lean more toward Mini's defense if we're doing that, because our narrative would be Caleb and all those young players fail. And then kind of like what we did with it on DraftKings, I would be pretty inclined to look toward the ground game a little bit there. Maybe some tight end play. We'll obviously get JJ into that, though. And then 9,000 left. You could conceivably go Rome. Isn't completely crazy there. Get a Riker. Whoops. Leaves $2,000 on the board, but who cares? Vikings D in the captaincy, paid off with some of the ground game, kicker, quarterback out of there. Just the running back from the other side. I think that's reasonable. Just to build one that has a defense captain. Not my favorite move, but again, doable, especially if you're just chasing the narrative of Caleb at QB, bunch of kids just putting on an NFL jersey for the first time. I can see it. Any other ones leaping to mind, guys? Anything we haven't really discussed configuration-wise? We could obviously just pick and choose different guys to put in the captain spot, but we're going to be largely telling the same story over and over. DJ, Caleb, JJ, Thielen, and then 61 apiece. Rakerd, and I keep going back to Komet. I like that idea. Handful of dupes, but it's okay. Loveland there, you get 69 back the other way, and you can go to like, Bears defense. Me. Santos isn't crazy with that one. But again, that one's a handful of dupes again. It'd probably be out to like 8 dupes if we actually got realistic about it. So one, handful of people probably, 3-5 people probably have it, leaving a lot of money on the table. You're obviously looking to get most of your action through that, but we've also got Luther in there. And then this is not a bad stretch with those 3. And if you wanted, you could turn Jordan Mason into TJ Hawkinson, which also plays at similarly very low ownership. That's probably a better path for that. Now you got 2 very likely, the second and third targets for JJ, and you just need to fade the big Justin Jefferson day. So that trio, and then DJ Moore, Caleb, and Luther is not completely nuts. At 39, do you have a different alternative from Luther? You could obviously go to OZ if you want it. You could go Naylor and go the other route and just pad that lower end Vikings. But I don't think I would want to do that. You can't get Kmet. If we didn't go Hawkinson, $29. Oops. Yeah, then you're getting down to your desperation guys down there if you do that. This is the non-completely nuts desperation dart that we haven't really used. I do think Kid's going to touch the ball a couple times today. I just don't love it, not knowing what it's going to look like, not knowing what the talent truly is going to be. That would obviously play a little bit, and he's going to be completely unowned. And in which case you do that, and then you get back to 10-9, and now you got some money to spend. Not that it really gets us much. It gets us Aaron Jones. And you'd still do probably 8 times. Yeah, don't love it. More JJ. Put myself in a corner with this one. I mean, you got like a cheap nailer there that you could do. Number 57. We're getting some passing going through Jones. I don't love the nailer idea, though. Again, getting down that far with so many mouths to feed above him that they care more about, it's difficult. But then 57, obviously, we get a little spend back, and you get like Loveland to pad out the Chicago side of that. And you're duped 4.5 times for a lineup that I don't love. If you don't love it, there's always a better path. I just don't know what it would be. We get Luther in there. That cuts down our ownership a little bit, leaves some money on the table. Obviously, you get a little lower projection, but that's just because he's more of a wild card. You could turn Loveland into probably nothing else. Nothing that leaps off the page immediately, anyway. That's obviously just getting that expensive Aaron Jones price tag in there. That 3-man with a foundation with 3 spots to spend. It's a little bit challenging lineup building, but if you're doing it, it might be worth clicking through different options because of how hard it is. And I think leaving money on the table there would be the path. Cap's in Menangle is a play needed if you're looking to go Jefferson and MVP. If you don't, you won't need him. We had a Jefferson MVP that I built before that I like that didn't have him in there that worked pretty well. But yeah, definitely on the board for being cheap. Number 2 on the depth chart. As Greg's saying, it's just what the volume actually looks like is going to be a little bit of a question mark here. 7th round pick. It's not like there's a ton of draft capital soaked into the kid where they absolutely need to get him the ball. So it might just be a little bit of, spelling the starter here and there. 5'8", 207 pounds, 7th round pick, 233rd overall. But back-to-back 1,200-yard years in college to end his college career the last 2 years. Kid's obviously got a little bit of talent or he wouldn't be here. So yeah, a dart at 1,400 to bring your price down as long as you're doing it to build justifiable things that don't lead you to the most common possible construction of that, right? Like if you go reasonable just to slap one together quick that spends all the money and it's duped here mathematically 5 times, in practice probably 12. I don't love that. Yeah, I also don't want to get Rome in there now, though. That's kind of interesting. Most likely Bears receiver without the quarterback, and then just whatever he does in the backup role. And you don't sweat it. You're just taking the cheap free square. And then you get the Jefferson multiplier, the McCarthy play, the Vikings defense against presumably a down day from the Bears, and Reichert to clean things up. Still duped a few times, but less problematically than that first one. So again, if you're doing that, if you're looking at him as the relief valve from all this salary on a Justin Jefferson MVP, just know that everybody else is as well. And you're going to come up with some common builds. So you still do need to get a little bit further afield than just doing that like straight line in any Jefferson build. And as we saw before, again, if you rewind the show a little bit, I do think there are other paths to Jefferson that don't necessarily use him. That in mind, guys, hour and a half, 7:30. Bunch of people here hanging out, watching the show, put lineups together, talking shop. I appreciate every single one of you guys. I know there's a lot of competing shows out there when it comes time for football, especially for these showdown slates. Our pal Neil's out there, the guys over at Adam's Company. Obviously, the Awesome Mode guys are still out there. So those of you who find their way here, really appreciate you. Hit the like button for me, subscribe to the channel, hit the hype button down there. I keep forgetting to mention that, but hyping videos is apparently a thing now. I think I'm going to punch out, build my couple lineups, maybe find some dinner, settle in, watch a little Monday Night Football, and then immediately thereafter, or as soon as the slates drop, if they're not out already, start working on next week. I want to be ahead of the curve this week. I was ahead of the curve at one point last week, rapidly fell behind. Like I said before, if planning and time management were my core skill sets, we probably wouldn't be here at all. Apologies for that. You got it, Cap. Good luck to you, pal. Appreciate you. Hey, good luck out there tonight, gang. Somebody go win something. Go take down a big one. Got a lot of angles into this slate. I really like the way this one breaks down around one game. Should be an interesting one. Should be a fun game, too. If we get anything at all out of the Bears offense, should be a fun game. See what JJ looks like out there. But good luck tonight, guys. Somebody go win something. Share those results when you do. At Roto Scouts on Twitter. Free premium Discord link down in the description below. For those that don't know, come join the community. You don't have to subscribe, but if you do want to subscribe, baseball and football right now over at rotoscouts.com. Under $1 a day for access to all of it. NBA, NHL right around the corner. Weekly, monthly, quarterly plans always available. Check it out. I will see you guys tomorrow, Tuesday. No football going on. Big slate of baseball, I'm sure, should be a fun one. Hopefully they juice the prize pools a little bit. Little post-football Tuesday bounce. We see that every now and then. Maybe it'll be tomorrow. And that's it, guys. See you tomorrow. Later.